kondalta kaki nyamen dum be jibelo be kacal kala kulla men yalan ko wollel be dendin ko lamen be kering kibarodo ko nga fa nyamen do nyanta ka ahmad jita le soto nun jam wala ahmad jita na tan kala mutandi ko ay sangole soto family ko no kiti o dalilo kambala akate mabe nola sa ay hakadani pour se ko nyinta ngalo sawndi mbo kelale nin ko soniata wato wati dorong mbata ahmad jita soto la janne pour nase kaja ibrahima nge konto nge bismillah ku jamalu be kering kibaro bari ngamra bi nin ku be kering gambia men sembo warta beti wole mu president adama baro ning npp ye rally bakata men soto suguta sate kono ngaje mo wuli wulolu wolel mabe da je dul fang ba fula fang men siata mo wuli ta woroti wara wuli talulu kolel mabe to dinkirado president adama baro kontan telephone la bangola ay sasiro ke cameraman la pour ise anatal ya itandi molula ako ay ala kacha fam kono ala satero kono ako fo ne fam pour ise drono fay santo e saje molu saje membe kering wodulato je la fake nyinin kam men president ma bore kuma jamal sata you know ad diamuta bara fanana buluba bulul fanan diamuta dr Cissé diamuta ahmad ba diamuta ni moko tangol bari namanan enyinin ka president adam baro la kuma kangol la isa fo mole yow bengo je nyaadile andum ila miro to fanam you know munayat ne yamira ko yenyi nyom bensiva ke anim fanam munati na fanam you know yake nyi nyo watola isa fo mole what your reaction is to the event
Fale baraka baraka kibaro senada babake follow meme follow mindiko NPP akam la weekend rallying sembo warta adiara akamuta fanan ko ye mo jamal sita mintara je bari gambelo na doron ndinga jinya wala nyindiko NPP as a political party fintanan ne puru to show a sign of strength olon ke la sembo yitandi in light of kujama mi alon ko kom banko bitaka nyama ndiamol siara anim political party jama fan me finde kan nan sai fane nje ko nga findi nan ngam faji tandi nga itandi fanan ko diamo sia nyaawnya chocho sia nyaawnya ndollo incumbent party de sembo be mbuloko no le molbe mbuloko no le anun se findi no dawda nga molsto ko party bawo party baba gambia safu fon ko ila findi la ka tandi ko tolle water party dol mume timbe gambia science and tending anim fanan ko in a way ila fatan la fanan ko itole do ko nyin kele kai tandi ko ni finda dawda molbe fin la ne kan right but having said that the other flip side of that also is in terms of the way they conduct themselves ila political ka kenyame I think for me I mean yitande wala nyindiko NPP paririne puruka kabedi kata 2026 presidential election it defend lokoma abekela okeda ku silate ndati bang akexilate mi yanon ka mantilimbang political se fond fenki it also fond fenki no nyim political kono du kolombang you know ka nyo ka kuma jaw fo nyoy dal itol politician wal da mal tema ka mobeta including momo baroe momo ay dogo dila including for example Jammeh ka nu nyameng the inspector general of police momo be the public service niatrete barole martetela ite nyanda campaign kala barone including alcohol because essentially bole suggest kanu so in effect I mean tanindela without us ngata danimbe jumpla kumon min fodaje in effect baroka tanindela ko atebe pare naka go all into Jammeh 2.0 that momo be civil service momo atem martela momo atele doko dila wala momo bata duma wonyanta loyalty ni solate ne by campaigning for him wode ubende mira kamba bakela so molbe nyandolo nalako NPP o parerine man for opposition party le parerine but NPP o parerine to go
NPP o parerine kay but Ibrahima also fana ngajele ko you know mo jamal lel fana findita is a lot of people
yes
you know kam to ko barobe daraja dinde
I mean I don't know for daraja because yaron kodo fana be bulo kono fali kodo ka ku jamal keno you know NPP is perhaps the richest one of the richest political parties in this sub-region. In the last almost a decade, Gabriel for be your resource minister of the Jama. So it's a kuku keno. They can go head to head with bigger political parties in the African continent because onavlo be bulokono. So omukukil na the kufla nyof na munyinde wala nyinde ko ikomunika minkaja wato wat is the power of incumbency. Baro bijela as a narrative control no. He can set the agenda of what the discussion and then the element in yala mol I hakilo diara baba ke ko ya lon ko politiko nyanda kala nyama nin campaign nyanda kala nyame. So the power of incumbency in terms of framing what the agenda should be going to 2026 is important. Ite mo communication expert, ite lo London. But the combo of contente was so yo sembo nyin sotale. So for yo sembo nyin ta ya maximize, ya realize ko dia mo sisi anya onya ntol nga sembo min so nyin nol mo so. Gamme no le katre fa ntole pour nga nyin dogo ge. So nga dogo min ke nyanto market la gamme no le, which I don't think they're doing a pretty good job at. I think ala information minister ba katakane, but I still think there is a lot of room for improvement in terms of ibela fonkonyes ibela agenda nyim frame la nyame ani ba wa fila gamme no le nyame.
But at the same time also modo fanan safo no le fanan ko kodoni incumbency kola president be darjandi ne ay do ku jamale fanan ke nying sanji say tambilan kono, you understand. You know, probably intenite ani modolu nga jelo fon ka siyasa ko online mol ka lafi ka tariya ka president wala kata kulta ke doyandi bari what we fail to understand ndeka même fo mole sa ko mol men yalon ko e ka tara online jama ni diaspora ni dulalto president be do ko ke kan, you know, whether or not do ko nying comme corruption ka sota kono le bang fo ila quality betea da fam betea bari abe do ko ke kan mol ba je kan ko abe do ko ke kan yaje, and people are really appreciative of that. You know, ni la moy president Adama Barrow fana na kuma kan wala ay menfo, you know, ay kurango la ko fale ay silo la ko fala ni ku ko tangala kam to ko nyinan sango ala political even hala man ke nyinan sango adela maralo basically it's like development of infrastructure or politics of infrastructure basically wole mu kanyin yurwanu nyata ko fengol samanang ke samba dulalto de men dialon ko mam futaje ay comme ay dulal même fo même defon se misalo fo tano ndel fo la sato wala même mu jokaduti, you know, for the first time we have electricity ay dulal fo dulal jamalu dulal to tarinke banko karobe la kaytan di ko kurango futata wol dol tole sinya folola, you know, for the first time. So you can see that in as much as incumbency and inkodo sefenkanole, it could also be that people genuinely appreciate his government for the for dokol meni alon ko be wollel kekan akay kurango samba kiyang ay kurango silo samba hakalang CRR basang, you know, upper river region. So all of those things are things many along they matter to people. Yalong wadu dul fanan kaje mul fanan ka lafi katare ka lafi kawo kulta ki kumul fendi kurang wala teng yade there. But you have to understand that kurang be futa kan dulala de many along ko ka moy tulo dammal kabrin Gambia baya wul namanan kurang waje ni woliye lies bol kurang bol suji dawda salon ko mole generator san so kono sato kono wara ye solar panel sot. So you know, it could be that, you know, all of these things are things many alonko they matter to people many alonko they are watching, and personally I think that, you know, I can make many will appreciate it. And I also feel that based on Nindokulu, President Adama Barrow se gagné no le gagné nya sangara limba famala. What do you think of that, Ibrahim?
No, I think that's honestly a fair assessment. You know, it depends on koika fanyamendorong. Yalang Gambia momo mansakunda ka fo fenke mole. Modo sa jibe no kontol dol mimboda, for example Brikama sino je nga foko. Brikama, you know, dol mang improvement jamadi in terms of development. Modo sino jana jara soma wala hakalang or somewhere foko baro minkentole wala, for example Basse URL is a really great place. Me along baro bata jele, so I development Jamal Samaje in a way, right? So I think also it's very region specific. But overall, Nina Gibe, Gamenola Nyanto, anin Gamenola Baluo, from Barola Mansakuna, you're falling no back. I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to that. That's the case that NPP government in Nyanto represented to Gambia for 2026. And if you go into that in detail in terms of mano damu jalati, wale kumaya da phone mekono, karamo benyadile in terms of quality of education, silo benyadile, silo de infrastructure, wama kule de miyalong, I feel like I say most of it, but even that, how much of that is like really quality, like sila kendo le for miyalong ko safoko, even sustainable for a long time. How much of that kudo miyalong ko, so do no kudo you do silo, because assessment or kita ngamol na miyalong ko kudo mindo silo dol kono o kodo dol sita no kudamana, so akamta ko dukul fanan dunda jela, for example. So overall, nina da jibe ko the quality of life of Gambian objectively, right, in light of corruptional, kodolbe dila molla jana du kolbe kala jande ani nyo kusi fa dolo ani fongol dabe kolari nyame man sakunda responsibility long call falindi, right? So I feel like wale adna barola case ning as much as abe plausible la come isa make no to Gambia ko do ko kele abe kolari for them to kind of sell it, because ni na jibe mol la balube kolari nyame falli everything in Gambia ndeni tamandara Gambia but in story memo ngalo ne ko for sure that is not so easy. So niata yol falling no niata to lenyin sanji seo minke man sakunda for sanji konondo. If he is able to improve on that, I think his case would have been much more easier. But I do think that right now, allocating is a kolera. And think it's not. I'm not going to say authoritatively because mang so veke ko itani. But ingano hani barobe win. I percentage new sort of last election for the those election domi banana. I mean, a lot of factors will contribute to that, right? In terms of coalition, also to the bank for oppositional for the for in the bank for borrow for dolby dollar can the bank. But about Koala Baba Kala, I number means on the last election, pro iota pool, because of just the various sets of issues me and are happening, Baro Mang will address.
But the funniest bit moment, I want us to go into looking at Kala, Kachani, Kumakal from GBA one by one, Ala Kumakal for President Adam Baroman, all of that. But what is also interesting is this is the same message. Corruption, cost of living, opposition, sembeda mende. Yung kukilong opposition sembeda wala 2021 election. That did not make any difference. In fact, President Barrow won and won with a landslide. I hope this time around, hopefully, malong this time around ko belala nyame. But come basically ndebe point me make wala muko. Ita kan menu be for them. The Gambian electorate kartetiyol bukaji ko president wala la fault munyinti o man sekundala la janto munyinti. Kafengolu data la ne anyum offensive ko but at the same time fanam ndol kanyin corruption cool men for corruption cool men way online and black ko I don't know whether for oppositional a failure la what bang for molel fang kaji ko ñun mantol sula, but it is not easy for people to see comme ñing corruption cool men yalon ko ke kamala masakundale kantul affect nyaadile umu fene di melon ko mol buko visualize no ninko mol I'm talking about the larger majority of Gambian electorates mol men yalon ko be banko karobe la mafo ndeni te me yalon ko 40 ka kibaro moy ngalo ñing ko dul ka kenyama na ñem festival ko but mostly people across the country it's very difficult for them to relate to the allegations of corruption. Misal fe comme be example men digam ni tara kiyang wari tara to la jokadu wari tara bla ko tendo woli nyaa menje woli mu kurawti ni na rekole ko alla nyin anin silo ni na rekole ko alla nyin kurawni silo do ko kono ha ye tapale yake jenne minister carrier nyine soto de they are not going to understand that e ruka menje dro woli mu ko kurawna tale jio na tale fengo fen na to koma ndo la haji teje. So I hope this time around the opposition can be a little bit creative if they want their messaging to go across, but as we have seen, President Adam Barrow and Nala Minister Mantara Siring, in fact, that even brings me to a rally in Sukura. Ala Kachakono, I fenjama faji, but I tell you, a diameter fana ila pareo tembo dala, kate for 2026. Asara ko nyinang ako sulamanta tula mankuro minister, kabiri minister. Sefulu alkalolu governor ako mo bele duna kate fa kono bari fanan he said they are well resourced kana makulal be parerine. Ibrahima, what do you have to say to that?
Kongo min fodon falli nying is Yaya Jammeh 2.0 baro Yaya Jammeh la political nya anala politic silo ayo faham le fosang atambida Yaya Jammeh fawla ngal ko kabin Yaya Jammeh fanam bidang Jammeh ka political ka wala nyama Jammeh momo atele martela wala atele dogo dila ayeke minister tiba including the Minister of Justice, even though Minister of Justice molka foleko constitutionally supposed to be atanyanda kela mansakunda la loyalty for example, so amanyan na political ko no nyama bari o manke gambede o manke jambela mansakundari and certainly atakela baro flan na mansakundari. So baro to sulatu la mankodo including alkalo anin sefolu hani imamol mi yalon imam ratibol nim baro le tombang fani bes isi da de ko ye bulo la nyokan ne baro te bayla no wada malabi baro ya tandile ko clearly al pare ne momo if everybody ni man fall in line to awol kam ko imam fall in line no abe bondi la gele. So that's the situation that we're in. A civil service is going to be you either join the boss or you leave the boss. Even na boss kono le baro support wala baro ye findi the boss kono kaka men for Usain Dabo right? But that's the reality. So it's going to be very, very hard with a system like that. Incumbent government, they already have it only for example, the state broadcast, minke the Gambia radio and television service, it only martawala. It only kodos the opposition party movement the Gambia kono. It only they just have so much advantage. Yeah, advantage by sort of against the opposition party, so much so that even the question of for election will be free or fair, it becomes an illegitimate question because the power of the state, I think state is supposed to be that we have to make a distinction from in terms of memu mansa kunadi and memu political party fanandi. Nimbarona la NPP ebenna na fulole use kan pour la political anila agenda pour kata 2026 falli. Wode omu kula de miya ko National Assembly nyando jibela babake. Because NPP ka kodo mume fu kodo mi botamin dole for example. Etoli o kodo
Kodijuma
ila patila resource ak baro kamim fo asobile bola nan China le kodo
he made it very clear. He said he's having
that's
supporters.
What I'm saying. Even advertising that is problematic. We know for sure.
But for baro ya for farm of mole ala nako whether or not, but Ibrahim, the hard truth also is all these opposition political parties they benefit from local businesses animal many alonko will be fasakam. So President Adama Borobe Wolella, he said, and then in Fasala. And we have seen that a lot of businesses, and that's not only new, woman ke kuguradi, Kabrin Jambela time lamu, Ngajele Mohammed Ja, the year that Ya Jambela fight in 2016, Ya Jambe donate Motokutola, I Tisadol Sangaya, Infenkotom. So I think from what I understand from Abemfokam, he was talking about a business patron soul, like businessman or many along political economy and all of those things, you know. So I don't know to what extent
listen, let me make this point.
Go ahead. Let
me make this point. Mansa kunda and mansa kunda kanafulo, for example, news minke, for example, in terms of the appropriation bill for 2026.
Yeah.
When compared to last year, nkata election year kono. Every year, ni election o nyandakele, ni karte fayo nyandakele jare minto, ni budget o nata nang, ika mindu na kono, ika minfo, anin kodo nynkata damin, sounding banko, ngolane. Oketele nung before. So, ni mansakunda ko ikontol bika mansakunda la nafulo la gameno la nafulo use pulka politiko ke. Ifo anko fali o manko kusotorindi. Kuma kenson, santo kumo ebola foke. We know that's how the system works. Everybody does it. Ibe kodo dale be designer le bafolo ko nyinkata karamol nyinkata mansakunda president office holder. Lobbying is one part. Nta man draka miro fon la. Ani UDP nyol be yele lobby sotole. E business solo mina ke kodo dila. Is ntolla nafulo gambela nafulo mansakunda ko le use pour ka politiko ke. We see
okay,
that
okay, say example di mon la bam pour nga faham so that I can also
yes, the farmer store.
Okay.
That's the political tour. That's an NPP tour.
But it's also a constitutional requirement.
Yeah,
maybe in the constitutional kono nyanta ufalina but constitutional le wolandiko every year sinya fula president nyanta la findi molkam. But what do you expect ni president of India face à la fenkolu à la development of Mole?
We could in fact we could scrap that. President Barrow option news not if President Barrow na lafta a balafata gambenole a gambenol mira but I'm gambenol kono or tony fon aso koloni fon betano a dino fonkol la boy a senelala as a senelal marco no
but it's a constitutional requirement, Ibrahim. I will not blame the president for that.
That can change.
Well, nsa falling no, but until a mirror so long I'm falling. I think the other example, yala niya lafa yo seniyandi. You know, I understand. I'm not saying that Gambia masakunda resources yuska political okay. You know, yenyi memfo. I don't know about that one, memu nationwide tour because it was difficult to push back against the nationwide tour. Knowing that it's a constitutional requirement, the president can say the constitutional in Sasala Mbake can, but order akakele in other ways, like nka minister je eka government motor use government dolka for government is also, you know, and we amanke minister damari but other people, and then we also see that government motor in most of these stores fanangike useless. I agree with all of that, but mbemem foka wole muko is that, you know, like coming state resource is state, especially money. I don't know to what extent so we use no to say coming, carte firm and fair. That's my point. Like I'm not saying that state resources don't go into it, but what is the scale of that compared to
Let
other
me
things?
let me
Hmm?
say this too.
Ah.
Hopefully nga kumfanya.
Hmm.
And one of the ways to address this, na political party, they are not
Mm-hmm.
publicly funded. So in the Gambia, political party ka kudo means it became declare because ndola taxpayer kudo bika dunje, right? So ka
Mm-hmm.
kole ala baga ka long ko political party ka kudo boni min dole, for example. So
Mm-hmm.
NPP ka kudo boni dami mfalli anyanda senala. Business
Mm-hmm.
ada kala no business o damati. Ninde kala no business o dam. Jambe aka jana, we know it. And
Mm-hmm.
if nanga audit report sol jibe kujwa okodol min bedum da faadu ba barola account holdo wolle mun kata walla
Mm-hmm.
wol kita
No,
jande
no, yeah, no.
yeah
I think the point you are making about transparency in election financing, I agree with you 100%. Ndenga ndela miro do political party be momo be it depends kang momo be la butudu dunda momo la campagne kunda abenyanta lala kene baler.
ha
But coming kam memfo, at the end of the day we have to go back to our laws. Gambia Bitilo la na luwal membe den nin carte fayola imang mo forcer politician olu pour kafo ila political funds ol botadamendo. There is not no such requirement, and you'll be surprised that there was a motion in parliament. There was a move to have a disclosure of political funds,
okay
sources of political funds. Deputy Olmansongala,
ha
the political party ibele fawmude amanke ko NPP damari.
UDP I remember that
The political party be, I think it was in the draft constitution. There was a provision to have comme mol men ka politician ol dépense ani la campagne lo pour buru dunda campagne kuna pour parti se fintina ya fa mole 1 million car le adina ni 1 to 500,000 ni le adina political party will be bang because ya lon ne ko ni woketa abe kolera for most of them to have funds because mol men ke finance amo kilingol lel mo kilingol lel ke NPP finance mo kilingol lel ke UDP finance ani nyim parti koto because businessman o katare fo je wala nyama e katara komale e ka di nyina ya di nyina hoping that ni momo winda wol kono ibela interest ibela interest kantalale. So to me I wala nanka fo ko I'm not trying to support one way or the other. Mantra ka Mufasa, mantra ka NPP fasa, mantra ka NPP against, mantra ka UDP fasa, mantra. But it's just coming. Nimbe kacha fanankela nga karo bejibe, and I'm interested to know what your view is on the other side, so that lamola men fanambe lamola. Ila fahamuro fanansa wara ye kol ye wanyama. Malam faya na salen kame SPM. But I think also, transparency in our politics, amanya na dena NPP dama is across the board. Coming akakeje nyaming. Ni be depends that they are going to support a campaign, it should be public. Mo bele nyanta kalamutala, mo bele nyanta lona. But in the political party le form so wale bele will oppose. So I think be menkeka wata wale move to protect their own interests. Ibrahim, quickly, Mse Fenko Fananjibe, what is it called? I come mem fanan for member dending President Jammeh Nala. I think this is the first time sinya follow la ngaje kene bato President Adama Barrow diamuta kasapu kaitan di President Jammeh ko he's not essentially welcome in the Gambia, amala wanyama akayen ko ni lafta bunda be yere na but ni nata mem fanan bela na ko mem be fana yolon. So basically for the first time fanan ako Jammeh ko komen ka fa ko ni mukedi nana basically, so I don't know, that is an interesting development. I think that is a very very clear unequivocal message to the president. Ndol bebe la firi ni nyunela ka long government ni president Adama Barrow be loring ya jambela nyin ko e nyame ngamira sila wo senatale ya itendi le ko ngamira fan demba sabali fon his statement was even stronger. Ka bambang ka senendi je ko nana ta Gambia mutarole ba ko ma Ibrahima ila jabiro mu munati woro
fali iba fuka jami hakilo dada barola ko mola kandra ko lendo mi yalon ko payra selo
aho bukato sarola
I thought that was really funny. Baro kachano baba kele man. Niye Michael Diala kai. But I thought even though what funny than the feedback, but I think that was powerful. you know about tandika ya Jammeh ko hanibi you know atelo mansati Gambia ya Jammeh mansa Gambia le I sembo mi mansa kunda so wala Gambia la president ya so ate ya Jammeh yolo ne so al no ko sembo mi baro fanam bloko so I think o kuma baba kele baro findita na to ka nyaton ka yitandi because anafa moldi you know mo kile mi yalon ka mansa Gambia sa amam mansa ko tanke sembuta wala ndafula nafata because political party ba bloko na Gambia mol bi jele mi yalon ko lafta la fobi but to show a sign of leadership and pragmatism in words, not only in word, because I want to true I kachaming for orally nindo, but also anyanto fanang lafala ning actionola. Akana dang kumo da mado kukelano. Kumo da mada manana beka kukeno. Bari I actiono fanang. Actiono minde wala mnyindiko mansa kunda ye tawota ye simfa dalta mi yalanko ka and so ninjamba ya singolojang ya mala kulluali ya fanyame. Moma foko ye meta ya aresia bute wala hani momo fo modekela bari loi ya landi Gambia loi ya landi in terms of inanta Jammeh sambala nyaming aning international human rights law loi mi ran ko dending hadama don la nyantola beyond Gambia damade because ko nga fo nyaming na kacha do ko majang Jammeh la ko manke Gambia damma kudi Jammeh ya allege ya tumi I mean kudo la mi yalan ko wol tambita Gambia damala you know comme ganenol molmil fara ganenol mi yalan ko ya alaj ko to lol fa anin gamben dingol fo mi yalan ko dol ye sikay nana mamuru nan ko tangi wol mu kula de mi yalan ko gambe loi de mamo mara bari also international human rights law fana marta wala so gambia fana sorta ngo saro nyin tale ngo la fan na loi fana kan so mu kula de mi yalan ko kuma de baba kel so barola nyin kacha kana ke proclamation de madi proclamation wala mu kudi mi yalan ko sa foko akana finti nan doro akana finti nan dorong ay kumo da mafa akana dawala anyanta fanan ko ya actionol ta ye londi an ngalon ne ko ka president ta ka kontibo kula mi yalan ko ayke amanko kucha handi banku jama aka wati janjam malta right but jambela ko mumulati mi yalan ko hakilu tuba anyanta tamala with you know a lot of care because ni one thing at the end of the day it's a cookie no nimma tama ku ma ngani kono tama dron se problème ko man mi yalan ko man la fala so man sakunda responsibility lo do ka and so ko ya handle in a way that is not going to be counterproductive but ndenga mi barola ala kumode asenada I think anyato
but do you think Ibrahim do you think Jammeh bina in light of because yalonte up until janning government be diamalanu before government be release findidila janning be president Adam Barrow fana mena ndenga mi dum fanko coming niaja aying come abe hanyiri nyame abe pipiro kekan I thought maybe aning government be negotiate can duma and then probably you know he was getting close but right now it's very very clear that you know aning government mantara diamukang aning Barrow mantara diamukang aning mo mantara nyomoykang so you know do you think he's gonna follow through with ala promise ko abina Gambia
Fali ya Jammeh na aba fansun dunia la kono he lives in his own world and his own bubble you know I think Jammeh is suffering from you know denial syndrome Jammeh manyan amala fa accept la ko even ila moy Jammeh fon la ka fu ko ntene Adam Barrow mba jibere ma tam Gambia ha he's not okay ni ila moy wala do refon ka ko mental issues jamale be happen kan je mol man ta ko le faham baake comme Gambia mi da fo sembu kilol bate bulo kono Gambia mobe atele marta mol mumel atele tamu Gambia di dibalo fate comme de be sida droite ay wuli dorang ay nanan jango nyama min diata ay ke ay mudun state house atene Adam Barrow no Adam Barrow molle kardi fay Adam Barrow ya dime molle kardi fay no mol ko sam fata la bota janta tata sidana equatorial dine bara be sia WhatsApp audio de la wato wadi dora be Barrow kaja fila bari Barrow fane wo sa because ni nyanda min kala ni yo ken non kabrin juna num na finda nun kabrin juna nun nimbaro kanyin yaje me kayen kuma kensen sival wado wadi ande fudala ni mumedo bande afalinde mamere yaje me bina Gambia fana nyamata de wallahi symbol so mi yalon ko mammi long in terms of resources ko fon le bade bulo kono wala symbol le bade bulo kono wala soldier le bade bulo kono mi yalon ko be lola ko wana fudala Gambia but even then Gambia is a sovereign republic Gambia ni la on symbol fana mo ani la on na fulolo ani la on security le fana mi yalon ko mote wulla no doron yana na on tole airport nyama ya fuko bindi ade bokela foni Adam Barrow na la man sakunda man sofa bari nda fana na mo mbira nda ngamre jambe abe nyinga be kacha kenson la doron bari na son ta fana akok nyimman ke kacha kenson da pare na kanana Gambia dena na falli
Hmm. For me personally, I don't know. I think Jambe Bala abenyim ku fango be kolendi ka fango yenne. In the sense that modul be jele meni alonko, even though mantara ka Jambe support ka fasa 100%, but modul be jele meni alonko, comme même fanam be mutari bulu wala muko, president kotolem, ninga tara, tumando batu, some people may be open to him coming. You know what I mean? But I don't know, faka nyin silandirol ni pipi rol menike, ape kumolu fola many alonko, they threaten the peace and stability of this country. I don't know. It makes it very difficult for anybody to want to even put up a very good defense for Jammeh. Really, for real.
I
I don't
agree.
know. Intela miro to, intela personal, intela miro menti wala muko government manyanta kala nyun quota akato yandi. Because nga sentiment sort of from my conversation with people in the government is that they are not taking him seriously. But I think they should take him seriously.
Yes.
Because membeje, Jambe ma yamfa hanisai, aman sabari hanisai. Iko jala diamol kono. Yalo nim molem men sabarra, iba jila diamu nyatole. Yena ye mol bolo say, what fang just at a human level. I miss this country, whatever. But come molu sendi ka mole adia cha kuyata le minale. Ninata ndeni de mentamu bankuri. So basically when me yitan dikela wala muko nyimman sabari. Anda man curricula. At a korla to do anything pour kaji kwate muruna wara pour katla interest saf or to undermine the current government. So personally, I think the government should take this threat very, very seriously. Ninko, they should take it very seriously. Imanya na sila doro ya fuko hai bi batla le nanat. They should inenda lula kuala le. Wo fe ya lonko luwa yestol so ala yake. Ndenga mira by right janimbe futa la mbenyin tembo memforo. The government should have had eyes on Jambe. Inandale Jambe la kuman kane kumpaji. Fwebe informal le ning agenso le kila numba Equatorial Guinea taraji ki hekla tu ya Jambe. Because he poses one of the biggest threat to Gambia. He does. Comme ega même for his popular. Ngalon ne ko. Sojarol menia jamal be sojarol ko menia lon ko ibe jambe fasa kanu. Wolu they are still on the loose. Sana manja nyolu ani nyun jongulal. Jamal be jemenia lon ko be baboli be borling ibe gine bisaw hanibi. Imalum
Well,
fanka sa Jambe has connections to the Casamas rebellion.
and
You know what I mean? And
yes,
then
I get that.
it's like Mohammed for last time, Mohammed Sanding. We cannot there are still people in the army. And in Dulatamania they still love Jambe, they will be willing to do anything for him.
Falita ka jam fale fon nko
Yeah.
mbala fiye kaya kunde ibe jam fakanne kana ta security fon dama fa bakar to monjara ni sidin jabe be man sakunda ani ya jambela baramal mi yalon ko wolbe siring jambela kol mume fenti je mi me kumpaji wolbe be nyim man sakunda la fana wo fana it doesn't make the case any easier.
Yeah.
Right? So even though we focus on the other outside extraneous security dangers or risk jambe se min kamanan kantola banko nyot. But the fact that ngani mol fanan soto mi yalan ko e do ko kem jaya jambela man sakunda man do ko da make fanan but mol de mi yalan ko they were complicit.
No, I agree with you, but I'm talking about people many alonko they pose a security threat like la koto lelti. They are well trained people. Jambela nyu jongulo Jamal Bey kono commando lelmuti. We had testimonies of them being trained by the Iranians, the Russians, and in elite security forces or kabodulal. So you made a bit in Guinea-Bissau, you never know. And then the hard truth of the matter also is West Africa has a history of violence. West Africa also this history of political mercenary will be jele. And we jump in Kodijama Bale but Gambia. We don't even know for Ikodul Mabudla Kotentul Menialonko whether he has access to them. We never know. Mole Belum. So Mira, it is a very serious threat that the government should take very, very, very seriously. Ntela miroro fama, nte kundingola miroro. Government nyantale to put Jammeh on surveillance. Kabirin Juna. Kalong abe muneto. Anin juma lel ka meeting osoto. Hanaka mune demo fama government nyantale yo lonnu. Juna. But I don't know if but it doesn't look like it. Because I don't think ningo beke kanung jambe ka manya dolbe aka manya dolbe ka asa wol dol ke signed it. But I also think it is not too late. I think they need to take it very seriously. Ika kumo bele mo malafika ndefang be kumo dul fanga mo kan malafika wol dol fa janka mol pipindi because they are not substantiated.
Yeah.
But I think they need to put an eye on this matter to let them take it absolutely seriously. Because nabe banda ala ko manan ko be sone ala wolto dina na findita nan Gambia. andu jambe se fintino Gambia anyhow. Asinano through the airport, ase do no fanan through our borders. Because Gambia na border lembe alo nebe nyameng, mo be sahayake. Ase do no in Senegal lale, o se kenole. It's very, very possible. Mo kana foko amam possible because Senegal from la border karo do beje me alon ko, they are not 100%, in their control. Being alon ne Casamas lo Carola is easy kaduka finti Casamas ni Guinea-Bissau fanan benyo nyameng, all of that. So don't rule out anything basically in Tebe. I think the government should take it absolute seriously. Like he's a man of means, and then na fulo ning jorang babul. I don't know whether you share those concerns. From am I just getting
no you are actually you're kumabale maudlando come do min for wrong nga understand even min fokan jambe mo limbenga lonne nga symbol lonne nga la amanya alfana lonne in terms of asamin keno anata min kala no fana ngol fana lonne but if falling al ne fana ko sai sanji delon sanji say kabri nyimboda president yala amna man tammi wo fona anum fana ngal ne fana kuma dol bi den tol fola no foto nyalam fo wuli alam baris nka rumol moy la fana ko abalu nyaabe nyaabe equatorial guinea mol mi yalam ko tara je na sita nyokan je na nyolon wol fana ala musol mi yalam ko ba ala musom ba bala ji anin ku sifal dal bandela fa min fola wala nyinde ko falli nte jambela na man ke victim wala ko di mi yalam ko jambe tajrinte ay dol famal fa ay dol bal fa ay dol dokol dol kotol ndese min fona wala nyinde ko jambe na la fana alam falli ay nana ya jame nala fana la Gambia ay nana mbal na woto fana ko fontol jamme kam min foko man sakunda falol le mbuloko na bam fo man sakunda sobe le mbuloko na ba sa yam fana ko nga ko la nyame because jamme ko le fo jamme asita le ko a fan convince ko nyim man sakunda man ke fenti hani biatel tamu Gambia da tel marta Gambia la even do be siring equatorial Guinea ko molbe la fratel hani sa so nyim man sakunda nyenta min kala wala nyinti ko ka tanni ko ni bayda na la ko baro ya fo nyame ni bayda na na moro kana sara findina
no, but yalam Ibrahima, I think that is easier said than done. Dela mirror in the sense that nin jambe nara, ngalon ko afasala de sabarla. Ebe jambe sambala mindole. Literally ita fola ko ibatula kanilale. Ni okay, wo fanambe ke la curiously. Ni asamba mile to the same thing lem. Every single day you have to deal with a supporter. Just like we have seen. And we are going Canada kate felokon. I think that is a distraction me alonko ndela mirror government man need Gambia man need right now. Ha jambe nata labe kanilala tuje fatu tuje wara ya samba mile to every ajibe bam hani nani galamolo ni e muta. Chocho kuma mole findi ye chocho ke boy jambe boy ye mol jele birin jambe kanilala mi dingo kumanda diamata ya jele mol ka boyi mol ka kumbo. People, it means he means so much to so many people. I think it is very, very, very risky to bring him. I think it is going to have real political and security implications. Nimbaro fango ndela miro fango imanya na sila fango kafuko bembat la nanang kokubo koko manga jibe ya bekela nyame. No, start engagement signing. Pinti ECOWAS mamandi go to Equatorial Guinea. Ninjambe beje ya mamandi ya make so akana Guinea Equatorial Guinea bula. But ning jambe na rafa dunda Gambia. Yalon saying a mantra Gambia. Alap ning kumu amu problem di. Obe Gambia e bantalal. Insafo Equatorial Guinea la problem. Yaje. Aka message sol men fananki Gambia at the end of the day they are manageable. Na diamu de fananse diamu no le ya counter. But when he is in the country, it's going to be a totally different ball game. Abinakela a big political liability lady for Adama Barrow because yala kuala nyama ako diamo be sialali. Niatu kanilai iko hanga tuja itara on the house arrest. The government will receive a lot of backlash from the victims community, everybody else, the international community, ani molbe ne normally ha almantara ka accountability justice ni akol prioritize ni asamba kiti yo fanana every day da jambe findide ko ka jambele kiti ni every single day ibe chaos ni fitnole kurkur la dron because afasala be dawda Gambia kono ibitale ba fulale be mabele jele every single day ni de jambe samba kiti la salonko you will have to deal with tens of thousands of people ni asoro mile do fanan the same ndefe amankor la fitno wulini just like Mohammed Sande memfo ndela miroro Gambia man pare ka jamme samana ngala noko eventually the ultimate goal is to have him accountable nga samana Gambia nga samba kitiola I contribute hana manke Gambia but I contribute a barrel but Gambia man pare follow nyanta ka bulol ni simfal menta kaji ko weke wo man futa wol dol to follow. I know it's very sad 10 years down the line kasi ka foko man pare follow is very sad yaje but at the same time it's the truth signing sulata special tribunal men na mole be sort of follow sulata maybe from you can even say a specialized way of ninjambe natamba jambe la ko kele nyamem fomba sambal may tule fomba kele nyaadi how do you make sure at fango niwe tanka bari mo ko tem fanan kana faaw ciociol kana nañu fensi def ndela miroto mom futo be to follow. So that's my view on that Ibrahima isela kuma laba fo molé on this jambe issue to mando ba don say Ahmad Bani Dr. Cisse fanan na kumo fanan ma demanding ke do nga kol kumfa. I don't know if I'm whether you agree or disagree with my
no
point.
I completely agree with you Fally. I think yalla ndi nyame akumada nyamato de malwisi ya foko jambe nga jambe lon comme ngalo na seminkeno and especially intol the volatility of na political situation of nyame science and thing so I think okumada babakale and yo landi kubakele fanan in terms of the dangers or the risks jambe impose ala nana Gambia. But if an yard and falling different academic for Niatal Adol Obium and Keno, Jambe, that's the job of the state. Jambela ku manke Gambia ku da mare kon kamin fo Gambia kitio fo da Gambia kitio nteng kon ka jele mon mi ko Jambe sifa ni en kuse hisen Hebrew Senegal ngama yare try world Hebrew code ya ni world in Chad former president. So akake nyama most of the time abuka ke banko fo la ku da mare mojima bi ko for hamje Gambia man sakunda nin Jambe asingo fon lo janda mata at danna jang International Criminal Court be double jela ECOWAS commission for be double jela aning regional body dol mi alan ko wala fo binaye makoy ibe moy kan
mbe moy kan entela frustration with nyimolu be these are all politicians Ibrahima they are all politicians ibeka political interest lel soto chocho kuma isidaye jambe tuntol bulija ya yebum buli tare fansun cool just okay let me give you a good example. Look at what is happening in Tanzania. Tanzania doing all we think and protesting as the government, but we are seeing the African Union chairperson congratulate the Tanzanian president. We've also seen that Tanzania la nebolu ila dana na banko la president will be come to the swearing in ceremony and the inauguration. Ntenga mira one of the Ibrahim, just 1 minute point. Sorry for coming. I think the government, one of the strategies that inyantaka jambe silandi mena wale muko nanata, just like Philippines did, they can arrest him yasamba to ICC. Hani lokun kilim fonga kana Gambia.
Exactly.
Because there are reasonable grounds of crimes against humanity allegation. Come with the Ghanaians.
Yeah.
Ndenga mira mansakunda nyantele ya start ko fanan jibe to have the ICC look at Jambela case such that nanada kana ke Gambela problem anatanya mendoro ya nyankom frikit ya samba either to ICC or some other jurisdiction Jambela kiti yo ekewor Nuko bakela Gambia. I think it is going to be very very chaotic. But look at what happened in Kanila. Yajila harama dingo mendan kamo findira wor.
Yeah,
it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. I think so. Nte dal wole mu ndela pointy on this matter. I don't know. You can tell us what your reaction is, and then you tell me what your reaction is to what Ahmad Ba said about Talib Ahmed Bensouda, but also Ngaji Dr. Sise Fanamfinda at the same rally. He also talked about a lot of issues. What do you think about Ahmad Ba and Memfo, about the opposition, the state of the opposition, but also about Talib Ahmed Bensouda? Talib Ahmed Bensouda, yeah.
I mean, Ahmad Ba, NPP, but Ahmad Ba Kumonyim I think also, is an admission of, or about confess Canada, Mialanko, what we all know, for example, right? Although what I wouldn't mention them in the law of Nindiko, Malafika accept ko UDP Hani sign, Wolfan Sembo, I think UDP Hani be at least from election or militant more the Sinadoro Yafoko, UDP signed Talib Botajewola and UDP father. I think more for the wrong. Kuma Kenso Ebola Fokan. But Ahmad Ba Minfo, in terms of Unite movement for change, Wolam Nindiko Talib Bensouda, it can mean for a general appeal or across regional or cross cultural or cross group appeal. Olam Nindiko funding ke mimati funding ke olam funding ke Gambela population or funding ke le siada je ko funding ke fanam jama fon ke fanjela ko itol fana ila fa funding ke la miya ko proprietary state house. So I think Ahmad Ba I legitimate admission in terms of that to say that hey ngalon ne ko nyulbe kel na possible threat ledi, right? But President Nathan President of the Vadi Manson Ahmad Bafon Kumol, he sort of downplay it. I'm pretty sure Nimbaro Yalon Ahmad Babola for the son no I for because no serious political party does that, until the man na multi-party system mansola incumbents incumbents always saw power. They always come from position of strength and power as against all of their adversaries. So Ahmad Balo Fintona, I feel like it's miscalculated, but it's also, in a way, it's giving credence to United Movement for Change to say that, look, until we just started within a few weeks, we're already getting national attention. We're already getting the Minister of Lands in the Gambia already having a Kataka. So that should tell you for Minister of Lands and for tourism, but that should tell you tourism. Land. Okay. It should tell you a lot of where our situation is right now when it comes to the NPP and ILA coalition members in a middle of a dynamic. It's not, they're not only focused on UDP, but they are also focusing on rising young potential candidates for the 2026 presidential elections.
Yeah, I think I think Ahmad Babe Meng Fokang, and which is also true. Ako emalla fi Meng Soratanung Jammeh Kande Animbaro tema repeat. Abe Meng Fokang ntela faham roto wolemu. Jammeh focused too much on UDP, finding that Mama Kandela influence la and infinite the damage that Mama Kande be menkela to APRC la victory. Because biri Mama Kande findidana, mo Jamal men ka Jammeh fasanu, Jamal el fanam bari Jambe konitara la Mama Kande kan. Manam funka me fake understand.
Yes.
So at that point, I don't think Jammeh sitanunga mutako Mama Kande would pose such a threat to him. So at Nyabelori UDP kan, Mama Kandela. I think Ahmad Ba is also saying the same thing. Nkana nyalo UDP da makang fonga nyina talibla. Because just like mo Jamal la crossro futata je nyameng, ning mo beje mense fentalano President Adama Barola la voter counter carte kesol dominan ko wolle soronum, they are likely to be Talib Ahmed Bensouda. It's likely to be Talib Ahmed Bensouda because mo Jamal beje mo la crossro futata je ko Jamal ya fay nun Adama Baroye last carte foyo ima fay Baroye because they necessarily like him. It was a protest vote against Sulaya Dabo or Usainu Dabo. Mo Jamal la miro futata wala. So e kaje nin Talib Ahmed Bensouda nada. Pengo fe yadi num Barola because aman Dabo le like. Tumando Baro, they are likely to give their votes to Talib. So ni waketa obe talaro lekela NPP la carte. So ibajelele okay, so Ahmad Babaka Memfontes fanam nga demento je wole muko. They are focusing too much on UDP, but nyina kan Talib la ani mol mena ko Talib ba sabano lebul. And I think that makes your point that Talib is now a force to be reckoned with in our politics.
Yes.
I don't know, at least that's how things look like. I don't know if I will sustain going forward, because yalam political ko be nyaming, nyambu moringo la ka kati demento mo malum. But I think Talib coming for funding keolam. I think there is something new and different about him. Niaja nyimol bebe siring, ikala ko kacha. For part I track record for at least I do ko kela sa fono lembe nu jenne ngani nit ñi neke nali sembodi na mbeñ nit ñi nekela. So I think we bebe jele yeah, so
yeah,
but
I think UDP la later on in finta bi ka tandiko e Talib la kumol le baykam I kumo for in respect to Usain Dawe mol ki
men kiakang anin the fact that wolmang UDP man fel lafate kang
I do feel like what is telling, and what is telling because ngajele Talib sign Talib fintanan na I interview ambassador aning online media atara aning fatu tour sida e kacha jamake ano kacha fanam kono ku dandam fanam foje wolam nyindi ko ate aka UDP koy min fo aka la nafulu jamal ni UDP min tara fo million jama anala family mumi andum fana ngajele fana ko UDP ngol fana findale ko fana manka I feel ima bay bari mas ima semento ya fana but I do think that omu kula dimi ko UDP ning UMC nkata dal de miyalon ko I think they're just gonna keep going back and forth. And nyanda flood lateral miyalon ko at the end of the day it will be kana nyina ilota minna in the beginning. Wolong ka doku ke dal puru kata mansa kunda kanyim mansa kunda mbije ko bondi. But it will be nyim back and forth minna wato wati talib ye nyim for talib man nyim for nkata talib le noma. Akam dala ko last elections covering opposition party dol pita ka UDP noma wato wati dono ika fuko ni UDP le pita kan nyobo no ko puru kata fayo. So most if I jake tul fan party kono UDP ning UMC science and thing, wato wati nyim back and forth. And I do think that it takes them away from the bigger purpose, right? They should at this point it will be nyanta accept la ko look nga football so football nyim bantala sa nga continue daro but ya to general so ko nambe kay mako because to leke samba jenke nyini ka ko la wado wado nange nyini ka ko la wado wado daro kuma so de min folaji but I do think that it will move me saying at this point especially UMC it will fane see daro ya foko look menin landolo mbota jela sa be continue kan dol ka nyato la nyini but womu kula de mi alon ko I think it takes them off the bigger purpose for which maybe around that they want to do. They need to move on, move away, and also, resolve this idea of going back and forth and focus on the incumbent.
Yeah, I think comme yemen fo futu bangolam nabe kuta kutaring mo be kala fi e kala fi le dorong kaitendiko the other person wala wrong basically. So I think that's what is happening. I think eventually they will move on. But what do you say to people menuko talib la foko UDP man fenkate is a way of being ungrateful. Do you see that? Do you see that view? Because he said UDP man fenkate ala campaño atella koloni naflo dundaje, and he also said he did not win re-election based on ala UDP dia akaya win coalition ole kang. I have seen other people say even UDP la statement of anankone wala for jeko is like mole mealon ko among ke malomba among ke moti menka nyinya basically. So I don't know whether you agree with that view.
Political katalo movement, science and then talib diamond coming for them. Usually I book a push back, but say for me friend kan nanne ka tandi molla ko hey, ngala na ko pati en na fale nyinken nyala ye mako le pour ngata kakemme yoti. Bari fanang nda fanang nganda nyin nafulu kari kanyum pati nyin kono la wo fanang mako le anim fanang alonko UDP da mamang kari fainte nim pati dole fanang lara nyoka bari ya nim kolbe diari mom ko sifal kacha mom ka sido reta yol ko ibike mira o sifal fon but nim fudo bandal ndorom fali o kacha sifal ka fintina. So I think it's a cheap political talking point. I think Talib Bensouda is very well calculated right now. Aka kumon min for kumon min kabwa dakon. I feel like he's having media trainings in terms of ning interview like sambanyaming because ni one thing kuma dol mi yaran ko be fola hani sa sino na afuko ning kan e ben makan ne ben grill kan wato wa dem fana ngadi yani bara mandalo ko aka tanila ko ni am fana be mala. That's literally what he did at that interview. He is pushing back on a lot of narrative that has been peddled against him. He's not sitting down ka afuko UDP le mo mekan aba afuko no ko no ale ning kenyal ban defana ngin kalen ne aba afuko no ko no atula mo le carte fa na bari modol fana carte fa nyele. Kafuko Puruntenga resigned because UDP da male kate fa woman ke kuma sotorinde woman ko kuti mi yalon ko de sonda wala. That's literally what he is saying. So what the can science and that.
Yeah, but I understand all of that, but at the same time also I think is it a politic diamola nyawnya sometimes also ikafinya dire give the devil its due. Ko se kole anyawnya ni moye nyinya just say it ninga tere ita fono la fana kana ko den ndela miro because membeje comme ka memfo ebe politique diamo la bar mol fana be la moro la be crossiro la and as a politician whatever you do mol ke hakilo to jela and they judge you based on that. So ndenga ndela miro I don't think aba talala num fenna nana da foko ni UDP nga nyona fale just like afa nyameng yen na fale to le len samanang they voted for me because at the end of the day comme UDP même for UDP la platform a campaign ta wala kan UDP la are nominated to the Independent Electoral Commission. UDP la leadership party do wala li campaign ka kartu fa. I think it would have been woman defa wala kundi mirol to drum. It would have been very noble to say yes, comme afa nyameng ala ku nyameng football bantale we all moved on yen na fa la ngeen na fa. But at the end of the day we all move on. Cool kera men man kontan. And then we decided to go on. I think it would have been very powerful for him to say, Yes, I contributed. I donated me and my family. Nga kodi jamale sama na UDP. But kana a contribution to your political growth kana doyandi. I don't think ninte mutalibti in my political message new message be continue new message be continue because at the end of the day because ibe bikono bari ka soma fana mirale and then ninko ka soma mirale because yala memem foka wala muko politician ibe mo nyinola andum sayem politiko be nyamen kundin kuba moli se bulan wala se kanu akan. So I think all of that, especially, I momentum mention come for there is so much positivity about him, about the message so like I'm put across, and then at the for the left like a political in a different manner, and then to be honest, to a very large extent, he's very gracious, to UDP, aka UDP Nyinyale, Jamaba, but coming, I think there's also a lot of pressure on him to come out and fight back and push back. But I think in all of that also, ye nyinya menkela iso fono le man fango fentinya ita fanambala because mbengala ne ko nyo nafalem UDP ya nafala bara fana ye nafale kendeke, so basically inte wole muntela miro tije Ibrahima. We have a lot of people many along ko ben jibe kan malum fe wonyo mo sivalle fana mbella mo kan gambe bang mol ben jibe ka YouTube and Facebook, and the safero fanan ke kan they are engaging with the conversation a lot. Ngal beje ngal tentu nga do kumoje jam member lamin jaji bulu ako two patriots at a contanta se wota kibaro tanya la nge nge tentu lamin. We have Alhaji Sedi ndefamo bitambe jang abe jibe rola ay safaro fanan ke memu fatsa hoti content se wota nim fanan nga mod soto jammen yalon ko yes ibe safero fanan ke kan andi be safero ke kan kul belela kabirin jambela na ko lembang pesen adama barola kuma kan Talib Ahmed Ben Suda. People are contributing nge beje nge tentu. We have Usman JC Dabo afana safero fanan ke janne ako atala miroto ate jigitala ko oppositional molu ila campagne nyanta sembele menna wole mu balu la da koleati nyinan sawala gambe banko kan bari ko ngafa nyame. I don't know what difference that can make because sering karte fayo fanan ngajele wo kusi va kilingol la ha isanso da koleati le mano da be koleati ne kurang mantara fenkarin, but at the end of the day it didn't make much difference because ngajele president ma baro nata ganye nyame. So I don't know how effective that is going to be, whether they should look for something else. I'm not sure. And then nga mo jamal soto jang Ibrahima sa fulla mo lal fana ye men bella maka radio de gambe banko kalbe mo kam Vibes FM le 106.1 FM. I don't know what's your final take because something ki ko en jam fala demanding te wato ila kuma lama ba kilamenti but hani bi don ka fo mo le ko nyanda ka Ahmad Jite le soto num bari ko nga fa nyamen Ahmad Jite ko ana rasango la soto family kono kiti wat nano aman kafu nomma bari mben kado dango be kilale kaje ko we come back again with Ahmad Jite na soni ata watu wati hanni mate fanan soto no mbe moko tango sambala na janne nga kacha ke ko la men yaron ko wolelbe kekan banko ko wala karola. Ibrahima, what would be your last word and then ila kuma labango cool to ngamen kachaja wara ku ko tangol do any issue me alon ko jikita ko probably ila fta fola bari wato mansono wala sa fo sa nga sarota
falle baraka bake mba fola mol mu we ko milbe ebe message ol safi kan na live ninto pour ala baraka nga la questionol jele milliardon ko sontela milliardon ko mam soyla ani hani mil fon yalon ko ben kacha vikan ntol kay na fa molti jang kacha nyin to bayala be kacha nyin continue wato wadi anim fanan ko pour ala faham ko ntol la kacha jang aman si ka fu ko me kumol le fola mi yalon ko be diala molle wala me kumol le fola mi yalon ko doron
kabro kamfandi lo whatever
kamol kamfandi hani woman ken dino di woman ken saw ntol dino ni saw Gambian college mika patije mika mo kotenje Gambian dol college mo jama biko saw ko mo la bari nte college bari ngalom fanan ko nse diamu no falli to ala ka fu ko falli fanan college bani mo botala wala nyindi ko bi ka tani diatale nakuma la ba wala kala nyindi ko ya jembela ko wonin man sakunda ya continue ka akuoning ka make sure amu kulati mi yalon ko kana sino akuoning kunna because jambe mu molti mi yalon ko ngalonne ay molso to Gambia la bari fanan ngalonne fanan mom yalon ko ni bota man sakunda e bota sembo so to tubawol coming for power and power mantere bulo kono kotenke ini wakatara siri te fon bulo kono ni ku yani wala na moji ma be kala football man saya dia kolene tan ni man saya dare do ni bota je itani wonni mi sole katara siri ndorom ikam mi enjoy ni obi man tara je so pour ya faham ko jamme bita kan through minto ye do ko ke ka en soko e kana opportunity diala pour ay gagner ini team because ni mo I don't know if the victim soul jambe mil maltora ay miliyalan ko ay la dunia kasara ay la badi wala dunia kasara wala multi miyalan ko nyanto la ko la gibela ya simfa dalta ka make sure ko nyin kana fudat la membe mantoro kama nan gambe nol mume bari o ko la do ramba fula mol mume ko ala baraka gambia bel dental jambe mo gambe nol mo ala gamben diya monato tala no bloko bari fana ngalo nako yam fo nyin kudol ko mata nyanya wolte accountability wala konti boro la palaso tala no wol mume nyanda kelala so ala baraka babake.
Thank you very much Sonkondeni abaraka bake lamoy lalu jiber lalu albe dawda dunia kono ngaje mol ben jibe kan karo bele la kabrin Germany fo base America ading kata fo I'm seeing Senegal also ngal beje ngal tendu na bitilo mansaling momenti iko niamoy dabanta kino kanne iko salon ko mu kin do mo karandi ngolti mbadi ngol nali mansaling ko tolong alsafo mole lalta al kasoto damento alamatilo to diala alamam betan kala katanin karatolla wassalamu ala baraka